Enemy at the Gates, 2001, brought World War II's Eastern Front to life with raw realism and chilling precision. But behind its sniper duels and sweeping battle scenes are hidden truths, from Soviet propaganda and Hollywood politics to real war heroes who inspired legends. Fact 1. The story was inspired by the real-life Soviet sniper Vasili Zaitsev, who became a national hero during the Battle of Stalingrad. Zaitsev reportedly killed over 200 German soldiers in just a few weeks. Soviet propaganda later claimed he faced off against a master German sniper named Major Koenig. Historians still debate whether Koenig ever existed. Some believe he was pure invention, a myth created to boost morale. The duel became a symbol of Soviet courage and Nazi fear. The movie turned that legend into an intimate psychological war between two men. It blurred the line between fact and fiction, just like wartime propaganda did. But while the story was mythic, the filming was brutally real, because recreating Stalingrad nearly destroyed the production. Fact 2. The movie's battle scenes weren't shot on sound stages. They were filmed in abandoned factories in bombed-out districts of Berlin. Director Jean-Jacques wanted total authenticity. The crew built a massive replica of Stalingrad using over 400 tons of debris and destroyed vehicles. It was one of the largest sets ever built in Europe. Explosions, dust, and smoke filled the air for weeks. Actors said it felt like being trapped in a real war zone. The realism was so overwhelming that extras broke down crying during takes. One assistant said, "We weren't acting, we were surviving." That gritty realism gave the film its unforgettable atmosphere. But while the sets were terrifying, the casting choices sparked an even bigger explosion behind the scenes. Fact 3.
Are you ready?
Yes.
3, 2, 1.
Before Jude Law landed the role of Vasili Zaitsev, several other actors were considered, including Tom Cruise, Heath Ledger, and even Leonardo DiCaprio. The studio wanted a big American name, but director fought for a British actor to play the quiet, haunted sniper. Law trained with real marksmen to learn breathing, aiming, and stealth techniques. He practiced holding his rifle for hours until his hands stopped shaking. His minimalist performance became one of his career highlights. Critics praised his silence as much as his words. Law said, "It wasn't about shooting, it was about patience." But while Law found calm in the chaos, one actor took that chaos to another level, because Ed Harris went method, and it showed. Fact 4. Ed Harris, who played Major Koenig, didn't just act, he became the hunter. He refused to rehearse with Jude Law, saying, "A sniper never gets to know his target." He trained with former military snipers to master precision and posture. Harris also studied German military etiquette and kept his uniform immaculate, even in the mud. He fired live rounds during training and spent days alone to understand isolation. His cold, controlled performance terrified everyone on set. Director said Harris had the soul of a soldier and the eyes of a predator. That focus made his scenes electric. But while Harris embraced precision, another star brought chaos, because the rivalry between Jude Law and Rachel Weisz's love story almost tore the production apart. Fact 5. The love scene between Jude Law and Rachel Weisz was one of the most talked about moments in the film. It happens in a crowded bunker, surrounded by sleeping soldiers. Raw, desperate, and silent. Many Soviet veterans hated it, calling it disrespectful. They said such a thing would never happen in real combat. Director defended it, saying, "It wasn't about lust, it was about finding life in the middle of death." The scene divided critics but became one of the most human moments in the movie. It showed that even amid horror, people still crave connection. The controversy only fueled the film's fame. But while audiences debated romance, the crew was busy battling something much bigger, the elements of war itself. Fact 6. Filming took place during one of Europe's coldest winters. Temperatures in Germany dropped below freezing, coating the massive set in real snow and ice. The actor's breath was genuine. No CGI, no effects. Cameras froze, lenses cracked, and generators failed. Crew members layered in military coats between takes just to survive. Jude Law later said, "When you shiver in the movie, that's not acting." The weather gave the film its brutal authenticity, but pushed everyone to exhaustion. Even the fake blood froze solid. The director refused to fake anything, not even the misery. That commitment created one of the most immersive war films ever made. But the cold wasn't the only challenge, because bringing Soviet propaganda to Western screens stirred political controversy across continents. Fact 7.
Bang! Bang, bang, bang!
When Enemy at the Gates premiered in Russia, many critics accused it of twisting Soviet history. Some veterans said it made heroes look weak and soldiers too human. Others claimed the film was Western propaganda disguised as art. Director Jean-Jacques fired back, saying he wanted to show the truth of individuals, not governments. Russian nationalists even called for the movie to be banned, but it went on to become a box office hit anyway. Younger audiences embraced its honesty. The controversy only boosted ticket sales. It reopened debates about Soviet storytelling and war myths. The film's portrayal of fear and heroism clashed with decades of controlled narratives. But while politics raged, one real sniper's ghost haunted the set. Because the movie's hero, Vasili Zaitsev, wasn't just a legend. He was real, and his story was far darker than the film showed. Fact 8. Vasili Zaitsev was indeed a hero, but his legacy was complex. After the war, he struggled with guilt and trauma. Soviet media painted him as a perfect warrior, yet his diaries revealed deep sadness over the men he killed. He wrote, "Each shot was for survival, not glory." The film shows him as stoic and noble, but the real Zaitsev was haunted until his death. His body wasn't even buried in Stalingrad until decades later, long after the Soviet collapse. When his remains were finally laid to rest, surviving snipers saluted in silence. The truth was far more human than the propaganda ever admitted. That quiet pain is what Jude Law tried to capture on screen. But the film's realism came at a massive cost, because one sequence nearly bankrupted the studio. Fact 9. The opening battle scene, where Soviet soldiers charge into German gunfire, was one of the most expensive war sequences ever filmed. Thousands of extras, tanks, pyrotechnics, and cranes worked in perfect chaos. Each take required hours of reset time. The budget ballooned past $70 million, a record for a European production. The chaos on set mirrored the war it depicted. Extras fainted from exhaustion, and one stunt explosion nearly derailed the camera rig. But the result was breathtaking. The sequence became one of the most haunting depictions of Stalingrad ever captured on film. The studio was terrified of financial collapse, but Ano refused to cut corners. He said, "If it doesn't feel like hell, it's not Stalingrad." That realism paid off, but it came with one more haunting scene that shocked even the cast. Fact 10. One of the most disturbing scenes shows Soviet officers executing their own men for retreating. Ano staged it with chilling realism. The extras didn't know when the gunfire would start, so their reactions were genuine. Several actors broke down after filming. The director explained it wasn't about shock value, it was about showing the terror of totalitarian discipline. That moment captures the horror of both sides. Soldiers trapped between the enemy's bullets and their own government's cruelty. It's one of the most harrowing depictions of Soviet wartime brutality ever shown in Western cinema. Even historians said it was painfully accurate. The silence after cut lasted several minutes, and just when the cast thought things couldn't get darker, one unexpected performance turned the film's Cold War into something deeply human. Fact 11. Joseph Fiennes, who played Commissar Danilov, wasn't prepared for the physical and emotional toll of filming. His character starts as a loyal Soviet officer and ends as a broken man. To embody that transformation, Fiennes lived like his character, isolated, sleepless, and underfed. The emotional intensity began to overwhelm him. At one point, he told the director he couldn't continue. Ano convinced him to stay, reminding him that Danilov represented the death of idealism. The result was one of Fiennes' most haunting performances. His breakdown scene near the end was shot in a single take. No rehearsal, no retakes. The raw pain you see is completely real. It became the film's moral centerpiece. But while Fiennes battled his emotions, Rachel Weisz was battling something else. A brutal shooting schedule that left her physically and emotionally drained. Fact 12. Weisz spent most of the film in freezing bunkers and mud trenches. She caught the flu twice but refused to stop working. Her clothes were constantly soaked and covered in soot. "It was miserable," she said, "but that's what war feels like." The harsh conditions made her performance as Tanya hauntingly authentic. Her trembling and exhaustion weren't scripted. They were real. Weisz said the hardest part wasn't the physical strain, but staying emotionally strong in such bleak surroundings. Her chemistry with Jude Law kept her going. They relied on each other between takes to stay sane. The camera caught that quiet bond, turning the romance into a lifeline instead of a cliché. But while their scenes felt natural, one key relationship in the story, the duel between Law and Harris, was built on meticulous precision that bordered on obsession. Fact 13. Every sniper encounter in the film was mapped out like a chess match. Ano and his cinematographer used mathematical equations to calculate bullet trajectories, angles, and distances. They wanted the tension to feel scientific, not cinematic. The duel sequences took days to film because every glance, reflection, and heartbeat mattered. Even the sunlight was timed to mimic real sniper tactics. Law and Harris rehearsed breathing control and shooting positions down to the millimeter. There were no random cuts. Each camera move mirrored the movement of a scope. The result was a slow, psychological war. The tension wasn't about who would shoot first, but who would think first. It turned sniping into poetry. But while the film's precision impressed audiences, it infuriated historians, because one famous sniper wasn't impressed at all. Fact 14. When Enemy at the Gates premiered in Moscow, many veterans were furious. They accused the filmmakers of exaggerating the duel and dishonoring Soviet heroism. Some called it Hollywood lies draped in Soviet uniforms. The Veterans Association even demanded an apology from the director. Ano refused, saying, "The truth belongs to those who survived it, not to propaganda." The backlash made headlines worldwide. Ironically, the controversy brought the film more attention. Young Russians, curious about what their elders hated, flocked to see it. The film reopened national conversations about censorship, heroism, and trauma. For a story about bullets and silence, it made a lot of noise. But despite the critics, one thing no one could deny was the film's incredible detail, because the sniper rifles themselves were authentic relics of war. Fact 15. The Mosin-Nagant rifles used in the movie were genuine weapons from World War II. They were borrowed from private collectors and museums across Europe. The prop team restored them, but kept the wear and scratches to preserve authenticity. Jude Law trained to reload and aim exactly as a Soviet sniper would. Each rifle had its own serial number and history. Some had even been used in Stalingrad. The sound team recorded real gunfire from these weapons to match their exact tone. That dedication made every shot feel tactile and grounded. You can almost smell the metal and oil. It gave the duels a physical weight missing in most war films. But while the rifles were real, one thing wasn't: the ending that almost never made it to screen. Fact 16. The original ending was much darker. In the first cut, Vasili kills Koenig, but then dies from his wounds. a tragic mirror of propaganda's cost. Test audiences found it too bleak, so Ano changed it twice. In the final version, Vasili survives, symbolizing truth overcoming ideology. Some crew members hated the change, calling it Hollywood's handprint on a European film. Jude Law defended it, saying, "It wasn't about who lived or died, it was about what survived." The alternate ending was eventually released in some international versions. The debate over which version is better still divides fans. It showed that even truth can be edited in war and in cinema. But while endings change, one historical truth didn't, because the movie's propaganda themes were rooted in a real Soviet campaign that still echoes today. Fact 17. During World War II, Soviet leaders used Vasili Zaitsev as a living weapon of morale. His sniper duels were splashed across newspapers, radio, and posters. He became a symbol of the perfect Soviet soldier. Precise, loyal, unstoppable. The government exaggerated his victories to inspire soldiers. Some of his supposed duels, like the one with Koenig, were probably invented by war reporters. Enemy at the Gates captured that blend of truth and myth perfectly. It exposed how both sides, in Soviet and Nazi, used propaganda as ammunition. The film dared to show the cost of that manipulation. In many ways, it wasn't a war movie, it was a movie about war stories. And while that honesty divided critics, it made the film unforgettable, especially for the snipers who watched it and saw pieces of themselves on screen. Fact 18. Military marksmen from around the world were stunned by how authentic the film's tactics were. They praised its focus on patience, concealment, and psychology over flashy gunfights. One former U.S. Marine sniper said, "It's the only movie that gets what the job really feels like. Lonely, slow, and terrifying. The breathing, the heartbeat, the silence before the shot. All of it was textbook perfect." Even modern Russian snipers said Jude Law's posture and technique were flawless. Ano's obsession with realism paid off. He turned sniping from an action trope into a human experience. But that level of detail came at a huge cost, because the film's production budget spiraled out of control and the studio nearly pulled the trigger on canceling it. Fact 19. Halfway through production, Enemy at the Gates was weeks behind schedule and millions over budget. The elaborate Stalingrad set, the weather delays, and the massive cast pushed the project to the brink. MGM executives threatened to shut it down unless Ano cut scenes. He refused, saying, "You can't trim history." The standoff lasted days. Eventually, European investors stepped in with emergency funding to finish the film. The gamble paid off. The movie opened strong worldwide, earning over $96 million. But behind the scenes, the crew joked that they'd survived Hollywood's own sniper fire. The chaos only made the film's final message hit harder, because after all the explosions and propaganda, it ended with something unexpected. Silence. Fact 20. The final scene, Vasili walking through the ruins, ends without a word. No victory speech, no anthem, no propaganda, just silence. That moment was deliberate. Ano wanted audiences to sit with the emptiness left after ideology fades. It's the silence of truth after noise. Historians called it one of the most powerful endings in modern war cinema. It wasn't triumph, it was exhaustion. For a film about snipers, it ends exactly how it should, quietly. Over time, Enemy at the Gates became a cult classic, studied for its realism, debated for its politics, and remembered for its humanity. It's a reminder that even in war, the deadliest weapon isn't a rifle. It's the story you choose to believe.